Hi everyone, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be looking at 3 brand new cases from NZXT. Now I know that's quite confusing because I only have 2 here, but I have the missing thing that I need to make the 3rd case, and that's a different front panel, because the H7 series now comes all at once with 3 models. A plain fronted model, it comes with a perforated fronted flow model, and it also comes with an Elite model with a glass front with 3 RGB fans in the front. Now, I don't want to give you too many details about things too soon, because we obviously need to get covered with them and look in depth later in the video. But I can say now, because I've just found out, is that the first 2 models come in at $129. I don't have any GBP prices yet. Maybe I will later, who knows? And then the Elite one at the end comes in at $199, because it does have that glass front and RGB and a controller and stuff which I should be quiet about because I need to show you in depth in the video now. So here we have the H7 Elite. Now I've turned it on briefly just so that you can see the white rings around the outside of the fans, and that is fully customizable RGB through the CAM software, and I'll show you the controller unit on the inside in a second. There is also a white ring around the power switch. I just wanted to show you that before I move on and we get things turned off and move on. Yeah, anyway, the front fans, 140mm. They spin up to 1800 RPM. The rear one is just a plain white airflow fan. These look more like static pressure blades. The one round the back looks more like an airflow blade. This doesn't have any RGB or anything, just white plastic, and spins up to 1200 RPM. So 1200 in the back, 1800 in the front, non-RGB, RGB. That's our fan configuration. Also, I have shown you the top briefly already, but you have your power switch, a couple of USB 3s, then you have your USB Type-C, and then a combined headphone and microphone. You can see the mesh panel on the top, and when it comes around the back, that's where your little hand point is. Now, it's not normally this bad to get hold of, but it's because I'm trying to do it from underneath and also this side. It's much easier to remove when you go this way, put your hand in, and then pull it off. It's just because I was trying to do it on camera and it was making my life difficult, trying to show you that way. Also, this panel for the roof has got a lovely silver mesh. I will say though, strange, it's not really going to make much difference to you guys at home, but it is handed. It won't fit the other way around because the teeth on it are like keys and they don't fit in the front. But when you remove that mesh panel, which obviously you don't have to have fitted if you're using it as an exhaust, but you can see there are 120mm and 140mm fan mounts there. They are offset as well. The 120mm has a very big offset and should be able to miss the bulk of memory modules. If you're going to go very big and very deep though, you may want to consider some short height ones, but as I'll show you when you get on the inside, there's actually a fair amount of room between the motherboard and any possible radiator fitment. Anyway, you'll definitely want to not go too mental if you're going to have a fat 140 radiator in there, but obviously you'll know that when you're building your water cooling setup. Now, if we spin the case around, obviously we've got a glass front, glass side. You can see the white trims on the panel as well. For a white case, that pleases me greatly. What also pleases me greatly is the fact they haven't gone tint crazy with the glass. Sometimes people do that with a white case and it kind of defeats the object. We want to be able to see inside, we want it to be light and airy and breezy, and they've managed to keep that with these panels. Round the back, you can see that we have those grab tabs, just like the roof, on the side panels as well. Now, when you remove the side panels, you can see that you've got little pop tabs on the top which go into the top of the case, and then on the bottom you've got little tabs as well which look like this. And what you do is, it's simply a case if the panel goes up slightly higher, you slide down into it and then push them in. To remove, pop the panel off, lift up vertically, and it just untabs them. And I'll zoom you in just so that you can see the actual tabs themselves, so that you can see what I mean. There's the tab, and then there we go. You can see the part there that just kind of sits down inside, and it's just like a little key really. Now, while we are around the back, you can see the opening here for the front panel, and you can see it is meshed. This is the main entry point for front end airflow. If we were to look through the glass on the front, you can see that there is a little bit more on the bottom. Now you can remove this glass front panel as well. It's a little bit stiffer than the sides, but mainly because at the end of the day there's a lot of glass there for it to hold on to as well. You can also see a frosted NZXT logo. Now I really like this aspect when the case is lit up. It's very kind of understated, and it actually makes it feel a bit classy, if I'm completely honest with you. Now, like I said, that side section is the only, well, the main section of airflow, but you do have another bit on the bottom, and there is a teeny tiny dust filter for that lower section as well, which I thought was a very small but nice touch. Now, when we are back on the side of the case, zooming you out so that we can have a look, we have a fair bit to look at. This section up here is the controller. Now this is your cam interface. It's your RGB controller, it's your fan controller. You can put up to 6 fans in there, although NZXT do have some splitter cables fitted as well, so that you can expand out beyond those 6. Just make sure that the fans all kind of all match if they are going on the extenders. I did plug the rear fan into this just because I wanted to check some fan RPMs. It is, sadly, the rear fan is only a 3-pin, but like I said, it did come on one of the splitters, and I was just checking RPMs and stuff because there was a small issue that I had with the fan that I'll talk to you about in a bit. And I just wanted to go direct to make sure it wasn't a problem with the the extension cable. Now, down the side, you can see there is a large section of cables. Now, this is all standard cables. I haven't done any of that. That's literally how the case come. Now, on this side, a little bit further over, you can see the ones that I fitted. They come with Velcro tabs. You've got the little recesses that you can put your cables into. It does make life really easy. Something that I did really like though, if I slide this over, is on this side you can see that you've got the lower Velcro, and you slide up the case, then you've got that tab there that you can hide cables behind, but then also another Velcro tab at the top. So that would be for your CPU 4 or 8 pin, let's just say 8 pin nowadays. And then there's another couple of tabs above the CPU heatsink cutout socket there. And it does just make life really nice. The back of the case is incredibly well thought out. You've obviously got the large cutout area here for being able to pass the cables through for your 24 pin and your PCI Express should you need it. And then the only other thing to mention on this side of the case is just down here, you can see that there is a cage stroke mount for mechanical hard drives. So that's a 3.5-inch mount. There's no extra like plastic mounts or anything in the box. It's just a case of putting your hard drives in there and then screwing them in. I have to admit though that when we go around on the other side, if you're not going to use that, you can, if you're not going to use it for hard drives, you can put cables in there if you want, but I think I'd end up probably pulling this off, as in removing it, just to make cable tidying that little bit easier with your power supply. Now, I will put the rear panel back on. This is probably going to be the time that I can't get it on. Oh no, it's gone on. Okay, right. So, round to the business side of the case. Removing that side panel. As you can see, you can't see your power supply at all. They've done a fairly nice job of it. Also, when I move the camera forward, you can see that we have this large meshed area here, so it doesn't matter which way round your power supply goes. I know people think it has to suck through from the bottom, but it really doesn't nowadays. They don't create enough heat, really, and they also don't generally spin the fans that much, so it doesn't particularly matter which way round it goes. You can see you've got the two cutout areas over here to be able to put your cables from your USB or your audio, or even your front panel if you're not need it like me and put it in that way. I'm still an advocate of putting my PCI Express cables this way round, but you can do it there. There are going to be vertical mounts as well, so this might be the time where that comes in greatly handy. You can also see that you can get radiators in the front. You can easily get a 35mm radiator in there. And there are mounts on the front of the case for you to be able to put 120 fans in there should you wish as well. You can see the area here, which I spoke to you about on the other side for putting the cables through. Now that obviously stands out from the back plate and just allows you to be able to put cables around there without grommets. I will say though that the top, even from this view, you can see I think that would have benefited from a big grommet or one of those standoffs. Now the only reason why they probably haven't is so that it's easier for radiators, but I don't think a small stroke minor one would have made that much difference. And that's why, because there is actually a fair amount of clearance up there. You can see that you could probably have one of those cable cover things going, but the only thing that would have made it a little bit difficult is obviously the angles that you may have needed for the motherboard 8-pin, for example. Maybe they could have had it on like a 45-degree angle or something to have made life a little bit easier. But what you can see is you've got ample room above. You can comfortably get a 60mm radiator up in the roof should you wish. And there is in total 60mm of room between the top of the roof and the motherboard itself. Now I say you could get a 60mm radiator in. That's going to be a 60mm thick radiator, 120mm radiator that's using those offset mounts. And the reason why I say that is the most motherboards, if you went like 60mm rad and then had your fans, it would kind of just cover the top of the board, but with memory like I have now, you would be able to comfortably get it in. 45 and 30mm thick radiators would be a bit easier. If you're going to go for a 140mm based water cooling radiator, then you are going to need to stick to just a 30mm thick rad and then your fans on the top, and then that will easily fit above the motherboard there. I know that's a lot of rad data for you, but it's just me trying to be in depth and giving you a run out. So if you go 120mm based fan radiator, there's 60mm of room before the motherboard itself. You can either just stick with 30mm rad and then your fans, or you can get brave and have it slightly overhanging because of the offset rad mounts. And I think you'll probably be able to get away with it. Now, to prove a point, I've been and got my Alcock Cool radiator, as in Dave Alcock, because we'd rather mention him because he's a legend and they are not. So this is our Alcock Cool radiator. It's a 60mm thick rad with 120mm fans. Now that, yes, is just being held up in there at the moment, but it lines up. It does just overhang my slimline memory, but it gives you an idea that you can get 60mm rad in with a set of fans comfortably. 45mm will obviously come up a little bit higher, and I'm actually managing to get that in there around the CPU cooler. And it was just a quick chance for me to show you a big thick radiator in the roof and also shout out Dave. I will say it's been the first time for a long time I've had a case with completely sealed expansion slots at the back. So I call them PCI Express slots. It's just kind of an overwhelming term, but anyway, there is no ventilation at the back, which I find kind of strange. Found kind of strange. Also, there was no ventage here whatsoever as well, because quite often we have mesh here, quite often we have vertical slots there, but I do know they have a vertical mount coming. And one of the things I will say with round the back is there are no tabs in the middle. So I'm going to assume, because I've not seen it yet, I'm going to assume that their vertical mount looks like it's going to use this whole section here. There are two threads here, which looks like that may be where it's going to mount in. But when I say that there's no tabs, there's no bits in between. So if you were to take all of these expansion slots off, that would be just one big open area, which means you'll have access very easily for your video cables. One last thing to mention before we finish with the Elite is just the very nice and again understated NZXT logo on the side, and that detailing does actually follow through and up the side of the case. Now the reason why I'm saying that is because that to me screams that if you wanted an accent colour in this case, you could easily remove this part and then paint or powder coat, wrap it with vinyl, do anything, and you can very easily add a splash of colour into this case with very minimal effort and toolage, meaning you're not going to have to dismantle half the case to be able to take that one section off. Or for example, if you wanted to paint the whole section here, you would have to be drilling and doing a lot more work to be able to remove it, whereas that would be much easier. Add a splash of red in there, blue, yellow, orange, green, whatever your chosen accent colour is, and suddenly you've got a big chunky section which actually fits in with the design of the case really nicely. And I'll be very surprised if NZXT don't start using that point for splashes of colour when they release the limited edition ones later on, as they inevitably will and have done in the past. So we've done the Elite, and now we're moving on to the plain H7 and the H7 Flow. Now the Elite is the more full fat version. It's got all the added extras, and the vanilla H7 and the Flow have just got a few less parts on them, at which I will talk to you about now. But the main difference between the vanilla H7 and the Flow is quite simply just this front panel, and that is it. So if you have the normal H7, you have the plain front, you still have the intake on the side. It's very much like a metal fronted Elite, but without the flashy RGB and stuff going on inside. Now with the front panel off, you can see that the fan is a single 120. The Elite had three 140s in the front, but this is an airflow based white 140mm fan in the white model, and then it will be a black fan in the black model. It has a matching 120 at the rear, not a 140, but seeing the two 120 fans, don't necessarily worry too much, because the testing results were quite an eye-opener, which we will talk about shortly. So you know the differences. I will say that with this, it's probably going to be best with an AIO in it as well, but we obviously test for specific thermals based around an air cooler, which again we'll talk about in a minute. So differences so far are going to be the front and the fan setups. The other difference comes round the back, because when you come around the back, you can see the controller is missing up here. So effectively, where it's not got any RGB, it doesn't need an RGB controller. But what that also means is you don't have a standalone product that is going to connect via USB to control your fan speeds. So with the vanilla H7 and the Flow, you're going to be, for most people, fitting them to the motherboard and then using the motherboard software to control your fan. So the differences were actually quite minor. Effectively, the Elite is a bit more flashy. It's got some more glass, and it's going to be down to you to what you do. You can obviously, with the flow, add in different RGB fans to the front if you wish, that are going to match the rest of your system, maybe match your AIO. It's worth noting though that if you like a system where everything matches, NZXT do the Kraken Z73, which is a 360mm AIO, which you can fit in, and they do come in a white model as well, thankfully. Sadly though, they do power supply, which is a C1000. This is gold rated as well. Sadly though, this doesn't come in white, but one of the things I can say is you probably not noticed that there is a black power supply in the case anyway, and the perforations do kind of work kind of nicely. So when you fit the power supply fan facing downwards, you're not really going to see anything going on in there anyway, so it doesn't necessarily have to matter too much. So on to performance, and we'll start with the very good news in reality, and that is the fans that they put into the flow are actually very, very efficient. There are just 2 fans in, as I've explained, one in the front, one out the back. But at low RPMs, this is normally the point that the cases with 120mm fans fall over. We test them in a completely unrealistic way as well. 600 RPM case fans, and then fully loading up the CPU or fully loading up the graphics card is just not something you're going to do at home, but it does actually genuinely help us pick apart the good from the bad. And so far, one of the best cases that we've tested has been the Fractal Torrent, but that had 200mm fans in the bottom blowing straight up, and the graphics card loved it for obvious reasons. This has 220mm fans and is trading blows with it, and I cannot stress enough how shocked I am about that, to the point that I went back and tested it a few times because I thought something was wrong. I double checked everything. I'm very, very impressed, and it actually goes to show that those fans are brilliant. They also did very, very well with the flow at 1000 RPM as well. If you're wondering why there's no 600 RPM for the Elite, the front fans just won't go down to 600 RPM. They stopped at 750, so it didn't get tested because it would have been unfair. And the rest of the graph, so 1000 and then the max, pretty much went, well actually the 1000 you had the flow near the bottom, you had the Elite in the middle, and then you had the normal H7 actually near the top. It was quite warm. When you make this a completely solid panel, in reality it does starve the front a bit. I will say that the Elite definitely needed those 3 fans to keep it in contention as being an average case. The fan at 1000 RPM was, you know what I mean, it wasn't particularly loud, but at the same time it wasn't quiet either. We move on to max RPM. This is literally the point where fan speeds and stuff kind of come into their own, and you'll see that the flow loses its place near the bottom of the graph, which is technically the best place to be, and moves up slightly because there are cases out there that are pushing way more airflow because of way more RPMs, and then way more noise as well. So the max RPMs doesn't really favour these very well, but I personally suggest and say that if you look at the 1000 RPM, that's more than likely going to be real world usage. But it does then still sadly show that, you know, the vanilla one is quite warm. I'm not sure how you would swing with that, but once you add an AIO into the roof and maybe an extra fan in the front, it's going to flow better, but the restriction is still going to be that slim slit down the side. You can kind of get an idea on what's going on by looking at the Elite, because if you look at the numbers for the Elite, you can see what may be attainable with the vanilla H7. So, one of the things I do need to add right at the end, because we are incredibly short of time and very close to the NDA, which is why you're not seeing it fitted, but they do all support a new NZXT vertical graphics card, PCI Express 4, and this comes in, fits into this case lovely. This comes in at $89.99. Now, prices on the doors, The vanilla H7 and the Flow both come in at $129, and the Elite comes in at $199. I don't have a GBP price yet. I've not been given one. We don't know exactly, but we will see. You guys are going to be able to work it out anyway. So I actually personally think that the Flow is the amazing one here. I really do. And I'm basing that purely on the fact of the performance. It's actually quite sad that it took me, because there were some problems with shipping and stuff, but I now actually want to put that front on that case, and then I'd have to rebuild it again. But again, like I've just said, we are so short of time that I'm just not able to do it in time for NDA, and that I cannot stress how much that is making my OCD and just annoyance tick, because I genuinely want to find out, because I think the glass and the vanilla front panel is actually a little bit too much of a restriction, because a single 120mm fan here does so well, but it also could be testament to how good those 120mm fans are. I think I'm more inclined to want to put 2 more 120mm fans in the front here, and in all honesty, for $129, the Flow is the one that I would say is the performance and the value for money award, because it is a cracking case. In defence to the Elite though, for it to have 340mm RGB fans plus that controller which can fan control and RGB control for those 3 fans, plus a further 4 more. Is it 4 more or 3 more? Now I'm sort of second guessing myself. I'm going to look. 1, 2, 5, 6. It is 6. And I like to check on camera, because at the end of the day, we're only human and I can't remember everything. It is 6 fans, so you can have a further 2 in the roof and 1 in the back, or you could just go RGB in the roof and it can control it all. And it does that for an extra £70 or dollars. Now, $70 might sound expensive, but the fact that you get a controller and the 3 fans in a single package, yes, it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as it may have been with another badge put on the front. I do have to say, though, that when I first thought about it, I did think that the lineup was almost very Corsair-esque, in that you have the plain front, then the perforated front, then the glass front. It made me think of a few ranges that they do. But then I actually kind of like settled myself down about it, and then I actually thought what they've effectively done is they've just kind of brought all of the cases out all together for the first time, because they used to do, like, let's say we could call this the H510, and then the H510 Flow, and then the H510 Elite. It's just they've done them all at the same time, rather than the vanilla one coming first and then a Flow one coming a bit later. They've just given you the choice right from the go. And fair play to them for that. And I think that's definitely a better marketing choice, because it's going to allow people to decide what they want to do. And I'm personally all about the Flow because of the performance there. Yes, the case and the platform has got a few niggles which could be worked through. Definitely something for any tinkerers out there, but this is the one for most of you out there just going to build a system, sit beside it and just want it to work. This is going to be the one to go for. It's also going to be the one I would go for if you've already invested in some other parts, because if you've already got some nice fans that you've already bought, or an AIO that you've already bought, then that's going to be where you're going to want to go with it. Yeah. So I'm just going to leave that with you. I was actually a bit surprised about the price of them in the end. But please let me know about your thoughts underneath. Like, subscribe, comment, all that sort of stuff. And because we like to throw curveballs, we are going to have an internet vertical GPU mounting kit. And the regulars will know what I'm on about. We always have a bit of a chuckle. Normally it's like an internet beer or an internet coffee or an internet cookie is where it first started, but it has evolved. So yes, this has been the tiniest one with another video for you. Out. Ding! Love you, sis.